This is Dave Chen's audio.
This is Devindra's audio.
This is Jeff's audio.
Let's do the countdown. I will start it off. I will start by saying 9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3.
2.
1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I am David Chen, and with me are
Devindra Hardawar.
And Jeff Canada.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today on the podcast, we got some what we've been watching today. We're also going to cover an email or two, and then move on into an in-depth review. This week, we'll be reviewing The Old Guard, which is the new Netflix movie starring Charlize Theron and Kiki Lane, and it was directed by Gina Prince Blythewood. So the same director as the person who made Love and Basketball. So really looking forward to talking about this movie, which has gotten a lot of great buzz on the internet. That's our show for today. But before we get to that, let's talk about some emails. All right, let's start with this. We got emails from the last couple weeks. This email comes in from Eric from West Virginia, writing into slashfilmcast@gmail.com. This is a follow-up email to our conversation a few weeks ago about the King of Staten Island. And the subject line of this email is in defense of Pete Davidson. And here is Eric's email. He writes, quote, "Hi, Slash Filmcast, longtime listener. Hell, back when you guys were talking about the potential script for a Battleship movie. Also a fan of Totally Rad Show, so I couldn't be happier with how the show has stayed with me these years. I wanted to explain why I personally really connected with Pete Davidson and his movie, and it all has to do with 3 little letters, BPD. As someone who is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder only 3 years ago, I can't explain how massive it is to see someone like me who shared his story. It's a complicated disease, but the easiest I can say is we aren't people in control and have massive abandonment issues. It's not something we can logic through, and worse, many people with this disease suffer from self-loathing and suicidal attempts. What makes the movie and Pete work is that he's upfront about the experience immediately in an honest way. He's in a relationship but doesn't feel he deserves love. He jokes about the most traumatic event of his life constantly and is unable to grow from his own demons. Pete, to me, feels like one of the rare people honest publicly about his mental illness, and to me and many others like me, it's inspiring to see that story told honestly. Hope you guys remain safe and strong. Much love, Eric from West Virginia." End quote. Thanks for that email, Eric. And that was a movie that I think Jeff and I weren't huge fans of, and I think Devindra liked it a little bit more than us.
Sure.
But I do think, even for a movie where I'm not a big fan of the movie itself, I can still recognize that Pete Davidson as a persona, as an online person, as a public person, as a celebrity, there is a lot of bravery in the way he shares the challenges he's had with mental health, and I can acknowledge that at the same time that even as I'm not a huge fan of the film itself, and
I
also
wish that was in the movie. I wish the movie had sort of explored and grappled with some of that stuff too.
I mean, you could argue that the movie itself, the totality of the movie is like his way of doing so, but I agree he doesn't really do it very explicitly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's working through the loss of his dad is really the arc of the movie. And trying to wrestle with the ramifications of that and becoming an adult in the face of that. So in a sense it is, I think. And I find that email actually eloquent and persuasive. I think that's a lovely argument. And I wish I liked the movie more, quite frankly. I root for the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I root for Pete Davidson. I think he deserves happiness and love. So I root for him.
It's interesting too, just can you imagine writing a movie and starring in your own movie about the thing that you're actually struggling with in your life and opening it up for criticism? I'll say it's much more bravery than I personally would have. That is not a set of actions I personally would do. So I do admire the fact that he did that. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to open yourself up for criticism like that, to show the world, hey, this is what is going on with me, and critique it, enjoy it, do whatever you want with it. That just takes a lot of balls in general, and so props to Pete Davidson for putting himself out there like that. And
for sure, So, it's sort of a Judd Apatow thing too. He takes those people and I think helps them and encourages them to put their personal struggles on the screen. I think God, the movie's title, Kumail's movie.
You're thinking of Trainwreck, you're thinking of 40-Year-Old Virgin, you're thinking of Knocked Up, probably.
all of those. I was actually
Funny
thinking
people.
of Kumail and Emily's movie.
Big
Right,
Sick.
right, right.
Big Sick.
Big Sick, right? Which is very much their life.
I literally
And,
named all the movies except the ones you're thinking of.
yeah,
So nailed it.
yeah, as always.
Thanks, Chef. So yeah, I agree that his talent, Judd Apatow's talent in that regard, cannot be understated. So anyway, thanks for sharing those thoughts. And the movie is The King of Staten Island. We reviewed it a few weeks ago here on the podcast. All right, this email comes in from Andrew, writing into /filmcast@gmail.com. Andrew writes in, pretty new fan of the show, but I love it so far. As you guys talk about Hamilton this week, got me thinking. I saw it on stage in Chicago last summer and thought it was absolutely spectacular. I came to the conclusion that, in my mind, it was the single greatest artistic creation of the 21st century. Between the stellar acting and singing, the whip-smart lyrics, and the motifs that are proliferated throughout the show, do you agree? If not, what would you guys consider to be some of the greatest artistic works of the 21st century across all mediums: film, TV, gaming, music, Broadway, literature, etc.? I know it's high praise, but I truly believe Hamilton has earned it. All right, so that email comes from Andrew. I'm not going to ask you guys to name the best works of the 21st century across all those mediums, but I do think it's the original question of do you think Hamilton is one of them is worth asking.
I think it is among them, certainly. Yeah. I don't know if it is the work, but it is among. It is in the conversation, and I think it will do more. It already has done more to revitalize and grow the musical theater genre. And then, of course, a global pandemic came along and took all that away. But I think it did more for its medium. That I think that's one of the things that you could say makes it a great work, is that it elevates the entire medium in which it was created. And also, I think it's going to have far-reaching ramifications, both in how art is cast, how art is created, how things
what arts will be created in the future.
Yes, it is certainly among the greatest works of the 21st century. And I'm going to spend the next few minutes while you guys talk trying to think of what else I would put in that category.
I don't know. It's hard to say across mediums. I mean, there's so many mediums. We aren't. I would not say we are experts in film. Even though we host this film podcast, I would say we are film enthusiasts. And so,
yes,
when you compare that to our expertise in other media, artwork or modern art or novels or whatever, it's even worse. Probably
we're not even enthusiastic about those.
we're not even enthusiasts about those things. So I think we
really
are
know
terrible.
anything, do we?
No, we are three morons that can barely put sentences together, and you all listen to us. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, what does that say about you? That's what you should be thinking about. But no, seriously, so we're definitely not people who you should talk to about greatest artistic work of the 21st century in other media. I'll just say also, isn't it a bit early to be naming the best works of the 21st century? Aren't there 80 more years left in this century?
All we've got, Dave.
Yeah,
we don't know.
I don't know if you've looked out your window lately, Dave. We better start counting our chickens now. You know what I'm saying?
But yes, I think Hamilton is definitely. I agree with Jeff. Very well said, Jeff. Hamilton is among them. I love that it fuses many different media and genres together, and it's bold and groundbreaking. And so I agree. I don't know that it is the greatest. I mean, how do you match up the greatest musical versus the greatest film or the greatest novel? It just feels like there's no way you can say one's better than the other. They're so different.
I think the only way to figure this out is to have a dramatic rap battle where we all, champion our choices. That's the only way we can settle this.
Yeah, no, good call.
I do think Hamilton will. I think it will compare favorably to the great cave water painting of 2047.
Yeah, no. Good call, Jeff. Good call.
Yeah. The true. Yeah.
Both tribes of humans will appreciate that water painting. Sure, they'll all appreciate it. And the scarcity of water makes it an audacious work in and of itself. But I think ultimately Hamilton will still seem more impressive.
I was browsing my Netflix recently after watching The Old Guard, which is our review this week, and I watched the openings of a couple films that I'd already seen before. Salt being one of them. I was kind of looking for another kick-ass action movie that had a female lead, and that movie I still really really love.
We needed a Salt sequel. We needed saltier,
Yes.
more salt, please.
More salt,
something.
please. Saltier, Salt 2, saltier.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I watched the opening sequence of Cloud Atlas, which I think is very. You were just talking about the true Devindra.
Yeah.
And really bold opening, and also a beautiful score that I still listen to pretty regularly. So
I have a hard time loving that movie because of how much I loved that book. And the movie will never, in my mind, it just wasn't.
Right.
It kind of makes me sad that I can't appreciate that movie because I think that movie is pretty impressive, but the book is so incredible. And I had just read the book when I saw the movie, and it just, I don't know. It will never, in my mind, be good.
Experience. Like I fell off the book maybe a quarter of the way through, but the movie I feel like distilled a lot of what I wanted from that story. So yeah, the opposite. Basically.
Well, that's good.
Interesting. Well, anyway, just some random musings. The movies we just discussed were Salt, Cloud Atlas, and Hamilton, which is on Disney Plus. We talked about it last week on the Slash Filmcast. A few other thoughts before we get to some what we've been watching. I'd like to do a check-in each week. Or actually, before we do the check-in, I just want to mention also that this is the first weekend in many months where it felt like there were a lot of good movies to choose from. In terms of there was no movie theaters to go to for most of us, but there was. I'm thinking of Palm Springs hit Hulu, The Old Guard hit Netflix. You could, I think, rent Relic, the new horror film. There's a movie named Greyhound that hit Apple TV Plus, and First Cow hit Video on Demand. And it's like, wow, that's like 5 movies that are overall pretty well reviewed that you can just access. You can rent or buy most of those, and it's like, wow, hey, it's like it felt like a normal weekend from a movie perspective.
I will say this is the first weekend where I genuinely miss just being able to go to a theater and seeing some of these. Like, I wish I could have seen The Old Guard with a crowd and like with other people. Man.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking this week, actually? This may be an obvious thing to say, but it wasn't something that I'd really reflected on, and solidifying it in my mind hit me like a ton of bricks. And that is, I had a job when I turned 16. It wasn't my first job, but it was my first like go to a place job. I was writing for the newspaper. It was my first job, but my first go to a place job was the movie theater. So I, at 16, was seeing movies constantly. I got in for free. I worked at the movie theater. Then I went to college, and I, became really good friends with film studies guys. I was a theater student. We would go to movies almost every weekend, right? Then after college, there was a period of time when I was in LA, still going to movies a lot, but I very quickly started a Totally Rad show, and we started reviewing movies. And so I was reviewing movies and have been reviewing movies constantly since until today. And so I really realized that this is the longest I've ever gone not going into a movie theater since I was about 16 years old.
Man.
Yeah.
Jeff, did you always live across the street from a movie theater?
Always. That's the only way I'll live in a place is if
amazing.
Yeah,
Jeff, I'll just say the way you phrased that also is pretty ominous. You're like, I've been going to movies every week until today. I'm like, are you making an announcement right now, Jeff?
Well, no, I mean, I haven't gone to the movies, to a movie theater since February.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I mean, there were probably maybe a month here and there, especially in college, or right after college, scraping by and trying to work at places. And I wouldn't go to a movie every week like I do now or did now. But I have gone to a movie pretty much every week. I guess my eye surgery was a big chunk in there where I couldn't go to the movies. But this is the longest stretch it's gone since I've been inside a movie theater for decades. Decades, plural decades.
Man. Yeah. I honestly, I feel like I didn't work at a movie theater, but I feel like I'm right there with you, Jeff. Just in terms of actually going to the theater, every couple of weeks or something.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to contemplate, right? It's like
it's weird. It just is like this thing that's been part of your life is just now it's gone. And it's like, and who knows if it's coming back, right, or when it's coming back.
Yeah.
So
if is a legitimate question to ask, if it's coming back. Yeah.
How so? That leads us to the next part where I weekly try to check in with the dudes, see how they're doing, see how everything's going. How is your life changing? I have some stuff I want to talk about, but Jeff, how other than missing going to a movie theater and this terrible realization about the fact that you haven't been in a long time, how is everything going? Anything new in LA these days?
No, not really. We're the cases keep going up and things keep getting worse and stuff keeps reopening, and it has felt more bleak this last week than even it has, because the graphs keep going up and there doesn't seem to be any light at the end of this tunnel. It just seems to be more tunnel, and it feels like everybody's just abandoned any actual measures.
Until we have a functioning government, there's not much we can do, unfortunately.
Again, if is a legitimate question to ask in that category as well. But it's hard not to feel this ongoing sense of malaise and monotony. It just doesn't seem like I read the news and I see stuff like New Zealand is effectively COVID free and they are opening up, and everybody responds when I say things like that, like, well, it's much easier with a country with that population. It's like, okay, all right, maybe, but it certainly doesn't need to have spiked like hit new highs and break new records every single day. Like there's not zero lessons to be learned from that.
No, there are far from zero lessons, and I would say you need new followers on Twitter is my guess, based on what you just said. Yeah. I mean, the European Union is a group of countries roughly the same population as the United States. Compare their graph with our graph in terms of new cases, and you will see it is staggering.
Also, the fact that South Korea had fewer total cases in the entire lifespan of COVID to date than Florida had in one day.
Yeah.
And the population of South Korea is like 4 times that of Florida.
Right. I mean, and there's countries that are like, Hong Kong is shutting down schools because of a new spike of 40, 50 cases. And it's like,
maybe we're the problem, guys.
We had what? We're at over 60, 70,000 cases a day in the United States right now. So and it's upsetting, and the thing that we talk about this relatively frequently, but the thing that continues to surprise me is how dumb it is.
It's also stupid. Yes. I think that's the most hardest thing to process right now is that it's just dumb.
There are people that believe it is a hoax, right? And there are people that believe COVID is a hoax still to this day. They think if you publish a story there's a story about this guy who went to a COVID party, right? Which is this party, I guess, where you try to infect each other to see if it's true or not.
And by the way, like when those stories first hit, a lot of people said, we don't know if these parties are actually happening. It just seemed like a weird, stupid thing that went viral. But this is one thing where, this actually happened.
So this is the New York Times, July 12th. Headline, man 30 dies after attending a COVID party. Texas hospital says 30-year-old man who believed the coronavirus was a hoax and attended a COVID party died after being infected with the virus. The man had attended a gathering with an infected person to test whether the coronavirus was real, said Dr. Jane Appleby, chief medical officer at Methodist Hospital in San Antonio, where the man died.
You know what, though? He died doing what he loved. Being incredibly stupid.
Yeah, I guess
incredibly stupid.
I mean, we should not celebrate the death of anyone, but I think that the fact that
I wasn't.
It's the thing with conspiracy theories is that once you believe in one, any evidence to the contrary simply reinforces the conspiracy theory. Right?
It sort of short circuits our reasoning process.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing, and this is all coming from the top and people who are their political leaders, and everything's super politicized right now, so it's hard to get any actual information out to people. That is why it's all so terrifying and so dumb. Man.
Yeah.
I hope we survive this.
It'd be one thing if we were all dealing with this together in lockstep and kind of like, hey, everyone needs to wear masks, and COVID is a real thing, and we all need to deal with it.
That's all you need to do. Just wear the mask. You don't need to you don't need to give up all your rubber. like we had to in World War II. We don't need to sacrifice much
There's
other than
no
social
mandatory
gathering.
draft. There's no rations right now. It's just like wear a mask. And I mean, what really, if the government just paid everyone to stay home for a month, this thing would be over. But
Sure.
it's not going to happen, unfortunately, due to the political situation right now, and it's very unfortunate and it's maddening. Devindra, anything new with you? You're settling in Georgia right now, which feels a little bit
Yeah.
like out of the frying pan into the fire, given
I
the fact
mean,
that New
listen,
York
so
has kind of stabilized at this point.
New York has celebrated yesterday was the first day where they didn't have any COVID deaths.
Yeah.
And that is a small win, but it's certainly a win. I'm happy for New York. I mean, Georgia is the thing is like the numbers will certainly never be as high as things were in New York. And I think my main thing is right now we just have our own space. So we can lock ourselves down again. This week we basically took ourselves out of quarantine because it's, once we flew through several airports and left New York, we didn't want to like potentially hurt anybody. So we've been pretty much locked down here for the past 2 weeks. We are a little more open now, but still, only going outside with masks, being very careful about where we go, how crowded things are. One thing we were able to do is because my parents are also being very, very careful themselves. We're doing the shared bubble thing where it's like, okay, well, you guys are safe, we're safe, we have a pact of sorts. So they were able to come and actually hang out and see Sophia and stay with us for a little while. So, and we can go there to where they are, which is roughly an hour away from us here. So we have that sort of like contact that we couldn't have before in New York very easily. As long as everybody stays safe, right? If anything happens, if somebody gets in contact with somebody who's positive, then this all starts over and we have to stay apart again. So we had one nice thing at least. Jeff, my recommendation to you, which I'm seeing a lot of people do, see if you can try to manage just some sort of like road trip or just a drive. Just get out, maybe a place where you can actually stay or just camp or something. Like I've seen a lot of people are posting Twitter threads about their cross-country road trips and things like that.
Yeah.
You could do that pretty safely. And even like hotels aren't that bad, assuming you can find a place that's clean and you can wipe it down and stuff yourselves. But I know RVs are very big. Go for a drive, leave your zone, leave the bubble where you're stuck in. Because the thing that was really hard in New York is that we didn't have a car. It was really hard to even rent a car. And I was thinking of buying one, but then we're also like, maybe we should just move. So I kind of saved the money for that. But in New York, we basically didn't leave a 1 square mile area, for 3 months. And that was very, very difficult. But being
it's hard.
At least out here and having a car and having, safe zones, you could go to a big park where there aren't many people and have some fun times. You can go to the beach where there aren't people and still like have some time outside. Like you can still break out of where you are. We're not as trapped as we were in New York, and I'm happy about that at least.
Yeah, we went to the beach this weekend, and my birthday is actually in 2 weeks, and my wife's been talking about maybe like getting an Airbnb and just taking the whole family someplace that you can just get out of town just for a couple of days and be in a different place and just be with ourselves, try to find some kind of isolated something and just relax.
Some sort of lake house or something. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
Well, I have some more thoughts about this, but let's take a quick break and thank a sponsor, and we'll be right back. All right, so I wanted to ask you guys, Jeff, you had mentioned a couple weeks ago that you tried to expand your germ circle with someone.
Yeah, we have a couple of friends that also have kids, and so we decided to welcome them into our germ circle. It's a bit like deciding to have sex with someone or something. You're having sex with everyone they have had sex with in their lives.
Yeah. And
it's more like the deciding to have sex in the in the Demolition Man universe where you have to give the approval and everything. That's what it is.
Well, that's our universe.
This is something that we're seriously like considering / working on over here, because so far it's been pretty bearable in terms of socially, right? Because it's summer in Seattle right now. We can go out and visit people and like kind of hang out in their front yard or their backyard and be outside, and it's not really a danger. But once fall and winter comes and it's very disgusting and rainy outside, then basically the only way you can hang out with people is indoors, right?
Right.
And so the question is, are you going to you basically have two options. You can either expand your germ circle or expand your family unit, or not see people for 6 to 9 months, right? And just be isolated for 6 to 9 months. So we're looking into expanding the germ circle, and I have some ideas and some tips, and I want to run them by you guys and see if like you agree, or if there's other things that you think I haven't considered, But I would say that if you're thinking of expanding your circle into like a pod of people, who you're all like, I mean, the most important thing is that everyone is at roughly the same level of carefulness. It's kind of like, you're talking about having sex with people, Jeff. It's more like, in my opinion, doing a YouTube or a podcast collaboration with someone, because basically you want to.
Well, you don't know how I have sex, Dave. It's a lot of talking. There's a lot of
That's
talking.
correct. I don't, and let's keep it that way. But I think that something they tell you when you're doing a YouTube collaboration is when you're making YouTube videos, you want to be making YouTube videos or collaborations with somebody who is roughly the same level of popularity as you, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Who makes these rules?
It doesn't make sense. I'm just talking about best practices, man. Okay, don't shoot the messenger, Jeff. Okay, but
I've been doing YouTube videos all wrong this whole time.
You want to make podcasts or YouTube videos with people who are roughly the same popularity, because it doesn't make sense for like a person with 1 million followers to collaborate with someone who has 30 followers, right? That doesn't.
It's great for the 30-follower person.
Yeah, it's super great for them, but it's not great for the person with 1 million followers. So same thing. You want to be like roughly the same level of carefulness, aka YouTube notoriety, as anyone who you're in a social pod with.
Dave, I feel like you shouldn't explain this whole process, because otherwise Jeff and the entire TRS crew would have never come on the podcast. Just saying.
Yeah, I think that's actually, I know we're not even talking about this. This is ancillary to the point you're trying to make, but I think that is completely wrong.
At least for this show, we've definitely.
For any show, I think the whole goal, if you're doing a podcast, is you want to get someone who has more notoriety than you to be the guest, so that your podcast expands. That's the whole idea of having guests, is to expand your audience, right?
Well, you know what? I think we're gonna have to table that conversation for a later day. But anyway, so I guess you disagree with YouTube Creator Academy then, Jeff. So
YouTube Creator Academy is a thing? I didn't even know that was a thing.
So
I've been doing YouTube videos this whole time without a degree from the YouTube Creator Academy.
It's true. You've been sorely lacking.
Fraud. I'm a complete fraud.
You never got your GED in YouTube, Jeff, and that is to your eternal shame. So, step one, make sure you're of roughly the same carefulness as the other people in your social pod. And then step two, I think everyone needs to kind of have certain ground rules of like what you are comfortable with when you're hanging out with each other. Like, are you going to have masks or not have masks when you're indoors? Do you wipe down your groceries? And most importantly, when do you take an action that is going to be risky, right? Like, hey, I went out and went to a protest today, or I went to the grocery store or whatever. Like, everyone just needs to know. And of course, everyone needs to be notified if you are sick, right? If you start feeling symptoms, like you need to have like some kind of phone chain or email thing to be like, hey, ping, like, text message, like FYI, I'm not feeling well. You need to like be really upfront about that. Otherwise, you're the guy in the post-apocalyptic zombie movie that's hiding your bite. You know what I mean? You don't want to be that person. You're going to be like the personification of cowardice and evil, basically. So go ahead, Jeff.
Here's why I think it's more like sex than creating a YouTube collaboration. It's because you get into, at least in my experience with the germ circle.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're saying, okay, we're in this together. I'm only seeing you and you're only seeing me. Maybe we can have a discussion about the other people you're seeing. But if I find out that you've been germ circling with somebody else behind my back, I'm going to be very upset.
Right.
Now, if you're collaborating on YouTube with someone else behind my back, I don't care. You know what I'm saying, Dave? This is why your analogy is terrible.
My analogy only applied to the carefulness component. It doesn't apply to like being in a pod with other people.
My sex thing applies to the whole bag.
You're right. In retrospect, Jeff, it is a better analogy. Okay, it's a better analogy. Congratulations.
You know what? I don't even have a degree from the YouTube Academy, and I still schooled you.
Wow. Wow. Ouch.
Amazing.
So anyway, so we are like considering forming like a pod or pods of people, and
That's cool.
You're
curious
taking
how.
candidates right now. You're interviewing. You're
Well, that's the other thing is like it's also I was talking with a friend yesterday, a listener to the podcast, who's like, um, if you're hanging out with people that are not in your pod, it's time to have the conversation, right? The conversation about like, hey, when you come over to my house, like, what is it going to be like? Like, what are the conditions under which we can interact, right?
yeah. Nothing like sex, Dave. Yeah, good. Keep going.
I never said it was. I
Sorry.
never
No,
said it.
okay.
I never said your analogy was bad, Jeff. Anyway,
I'm saying. No, I actually feel for people that don't have kids because the decision was made for me. It's like who can watch my kids?
Pretty much.
I'm not
Yeah.
selecting based on people I want to hang out with or their best practices or my trust in them. I have two criteria. One is, are you basically care about this as much as I do, the safety issue?
Yeah, right.
And B, do you have children around the same age, and are you willing to watch mine for a little while, and I can watch yours for a little while?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
That is the two criteria.
And that's the thing is you end up using criteria that you might not have used in another time. But yeah, The Cut, which is a website for New York Magazine, did have a conversation about like friends discussing the COVID-19 rules before hanging out. I was talking with a friend yesterday who's a listener who's like, they set up like a survey monkey, and it's like, okay, here are the before we hang out, like you need to answer these 5 questions, like when was the last time you went outside, what'd you do, who else you been hanging out with, all this stuff.
Sure.
And I think that's
Listen,
all
the
extremely reasonable, in my opinion.
Our social contract is broken, right?
Yeah.
So now we have to basically rewrite it from scratch on an individual basis with all of our friends. So yeah, hopefully,
true.
I would say one thing is there should be a no hard feelings clause.
Yes.
Like just if anybody feels not unsafe, like you need a safe word, you need to be able to tap out, and you'll still be friends.
We can still FaceTime all you want.
Yeah,
We'll be FaceTime friends.
So are you guys thinking of like forming these social pods? Like it sounds like Jeff, you already have one. Devindra, you just
Yeah,
moved
we're
in.
done and done.
I mean,
Yeah.
just with my parents,
With your
and
family,
my brother, who are being safe and staying home most of the time, and when they aren't, I get to yell at them about it. So it's also the double benefit of me, trying to keep my parents safe too. So because they want to be able to hang out with my daughter, so that is the bait there.
That's the
We'll
carrot.
see. Yeah, basically. We do have one of our new neighbors has a young child, and I'm hoping like eventually she and Sophia will be able to play. Like that's kind of why we moved, because it was so hard in New York to stay safe because we were in the middle of everything. Now maybe eventually in a couple months, once Georgia calms down, maybe we can.
Yeah, I hope that for you. I think it's so nice to have that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you though, the one silver lining for COVID is I haven't been to a 3-year-old birthday party in 4 months.
Oh man, that's great.
You know
Love
what?
it.
It is a beautiful thing. I would have been literally every weekend would have been a kid's birthday party.
Although I will say at this point, man, I miss the dumb kid birthday parties too. Like, it's among the worst things you have to do when you have kids and you have friends who have kids. Like it's annoying. They're not grown-up parties, but I would still gladly go for some of those right now.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, to the extent that our podcast can help to normalize any kind of behavior, I think there's probably people out there who are, we talked a couple weeks ago or last week about people having a difficult time resisting social pressure to not wear masks, or resisting social pressure to, to not gather in groups indoors for super spreader events and so on. And to the extent that this podcast can help normalize anything, I would say if you're thinking of like forming social pods or figuring out rules, you're going to need to have difficult conversations. That is completely normal. And I think we here on the podcast really encourage it, because it's better to like have the conversation up front than to feel like something bad happened without your consent. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody made a YouTube video with you without you knowing.
All right, let's move on to what we've been watching. But hope everyone's staying safe out there. Anyway, what we've been watching. All right, let me mention a couple of things. First of all, I want to give a shout out to a Netflix short film I watched. I watched a short documentary about Zion Clark. It's called Zion. It's on Netflix. This thing is like 10 minutes long. And this short documentary tells the story of Zion Clark, who was born with caudal regression syndrome, which left him without legs. And so he has no legs and still became like a very successful wrestler in high school and college. And just the visual of this guy wrestling people who have legs is just incredibly striking. He is extremely talented and skilled. The documentary is not that great as a documentary. Like when you think of a documentary, you're like, oh, and the movie's called Zion, right? Which I know when Jeff Kanata watches a movie where it's the person's name in the title, he thinks like, I'm gonna get a summary of this person's life in this movie, right?
Yeah,
This movie's gonna capture their essence, right? And
yes.
I would say this movie captures their essence from a raw, visceral, emotional perspective. It is a sensory experience, but you learn very, very little about Zion as a person, right? You get like tiny snippets of his life, but from a visual and audio perspective, it is a breathtaking experience. So I would recommend this short film for that reason alone. It's really striking. It's a very intense experience, and I'd recommend you check it out. It's called Zion. It's a short film on Netflix. You, gents, may or may not have heard that Amazon Prime Video, where I currently work, launched a new feature called Amazon Watch Party. Did you guys hear about this?
Mm-hmm.
It's there's this other feature called Netflix Watch Party that launched a while ago, but that was like a third-party Chrome extension. Amazon Watch Party is, I believe, like an officially sanctioned, Amazon actually built it feature where you can watch any movie that's on Prime Video right now with others and chat together in a chat room. And I did a watch party with some friends the other night, and it worked really, really well. And you can kind of there's a little chat window on the side. You can kind of chat and give some commentary as the movie's happening. And I did not choose the movie, but the movie that was chosen was a movie called Rat Race, which is the 2001 Jerry Zucker movie that's based on It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. And it's about this millionaire that forces people to go on this crazy adventure in order to obtain $2 million. The movie is not very good. It has aged pretty poorly. I would say that like movies that make fun of marginalized groups in general age pretty poorly, right? I think that like it's funny, it's edgy at the time, maybe, but then like as time goes on and humanity becomes more enlightened, that people don't find it as amusing anymore, and it becomes very, very cringy. And I would say there is a good amount of that humor in this movie. And it's weird. I mean, I like Jerry Zucker's other movies, right? I mean, I think that he's made some really funny films. Airplane, right, being like probably one of the classic exemplars of the genre. Top Secret, which is a movie that hasn't been seen as widely, but is starting to become more recognized for its brilliance.
I've always loved that movie.
Yeah, great movie. Rat Race, not as good. Not as good in my opinion. But I did have a great time chatting with people in the Amazon Watch Party. And it's cool. It's you create the watch party, and then it's just a link. You send it out. You know, I tweeted it, and then people just click on the link, and they can log in and be part of the watch party. So it's super easy to use. And it definitely is useful in this day and age when we're all watching things together apart, maybe. So would recommend y'all check it out. That's Amazon Watch Party, and the movie I watched was Rat Race. Finally, quick shout out to I May Destroy You, the HBO original series that Devindra shouted out a few weeks ago. I've been watching it. I'm like 5 episodes in. There are 12 episodes. I was a little surprised by that because usually there's like 6 episodes. And so we're like halfway through the show right now, and I think it is very, very good. I think it is really incisive and raw and also very graphic. Would not watch this with the parents or the kids, but it is it depicts kind of aspects of sexuality that you might not have seen before on your TV, and I think it's worth considering, worth talking about. So I just want to give a shout out to that show, I May Destroy You, and say probably one of the best things on TV right now. So check it out.
It's fantastic. There was a great, I think it was on Vulture, but there was a great feature on Michaela Cole over the past week, and it is definitely worth reading. I love her as a creator and as an artist. Definitely check out Chewing Gum, which is her Netflix thing, which is just a fun, cute comedy about a girl trying to lose her virginity. But it's really funny and really incisive too. And I really dug Black Earth Rising. I keep bringing it up. John Goodman, Michaela Cole. It's fantastic.
All right, well, that's I May Destroy You, and yeah, Michaela Cole, fascinating feature in Vulture, talking about like ownership of her property, very interesting stuff. So check that out. That's what I've been watching. Kanata, Jeff, what have you been watching?
Well, it's very funny that you did a watch party for Rat Race, which is a big race, because I did something very similar, actually, without any knowledge of what you were doing. There's a podcast that I do with Anthony Carboni called We Have Concerns, and we did a watch party, basically a watch party for our patrons for a movie called Cannonball Run 2. We wanted to do Cannonball Run, but it turns out, I guess the rights for the original Cannonball Run are murky, and you can't get it anywhere. It's like it's not streaming anywhere. You can't get it. You have to pay exorbitant fees for DVDs that are like, from other countries. It's wild. I don't know what the deal is with Cannonball Run, but Cannonball Run 2, widely available, easily streamed. So that's what we did. And the whole reason we did that is because we did a story on We Have Concerns about how during the pandemic, at least the first couple of months of the pandemic, when everybody was staying home, everybody across the country was staying home, the record for the Cannonball Run was broken like 7 times in a row in like a 2-month period, which is unheard of because the Cannonball Run, which is this race from New York City to Los Angeles across the country, had stood for years and years and years. And so the fact that it was broken 7 times because no one was on the road. It was this wild free-for-all where all these people try to do Cannonball Runs. Anyway, fascinating to me. So we decided to watch the movie, but couldn't. And so we had to watch the sequel from 1984, starring Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise and pretty much every TV actor of that time, of like the late 70s, early 80s. And boy, Dave, if you talk about things not aging well, woo! Woo! I tell you what, it is a barely watchable movie. There's even the people you figure will be the stars or bring some charm to it. There's just no semblance of anything of this movie. It is almost complete garbage. There's not even great set pieces or anything. It is very little redeeming about Cannonball Run 2. I'll give you some examples. Jamie Farr plays a sheik that they refer to as the falafel, King Falafel. So they're already great. We're in great territory here. There's a whole bunch of Italians in the movie. They're called the Ravioli family, the Cannoli family. It's just stupid. Jackie Chan is in this movie. I think it's his first American movie.
Yeah, I think this movie single-handedly killed his American acting career for a couple decades, is my understanding.
Yes, Jackie Chan, we all know, is Chinese. He plays an engineer from Mitsubishi, which of course is a Japanese company, because no one could give a fuck back then, I guess, about details like that. It is just unwatchable. So it should not be seen by any human, in my opinion. There's very little redeeming about it. There are people credited in the movie as Lamborghini Babe and Lamborghini Babe 2. This is that kind of movie. But it's not even it's not even funny. It's not fun. There's like 3 jokes in the whole thing where I was like, okay, that's a solid joke. But most of it is just utter garbage. I'm very curious what the original Cannonball Run, if it was any better quality, but clearly this sequel is barely held together.
Let me give you a pro tip, Jeff. Okay, because this is the second time I've done a watch party that's gotten super awkward because of content in the movie. The first time was when I did a watch party for Not Another Teen Movie, which is, in my opinion, still very funny, but opens with an extended scene of something very graphic happening. And I it's just like, oh, I had completely forgot about this, and now I'm watching this with my friends because I've suggested this movie. Just do yourself a favor, before you suggest a movie for watch party, like head on over to like filmratings.com or something else and like remind yourself why these movies are rated what they are. You know what I mean? And that way,
yes,
I'm
but
not saying
that's
you would
kinda
have
not the
changed your
point.
course of action, but at least you know to be ready. You know what I'm saying?
It's more, well, yeah, I suspected that was the case. It was not a surprise to me. I mean, maybe the extent to which it existed was a surprise, but it's sort of, there was no not doing Cannonball Run. It was all about doing the Cannonball Run. We just wish we could have done the first movie. Who knows? Maybe the first movie just as bad. But anyway, that was my experience with Cannonball Run 2, which is pretty much as bad as they come, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that Cannonball Run 2 did not age well.
I don't even think, I would be surprised if it, at the time, was any good.
Oh, yeah.
It
aged poorly immediately.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
It aged
wasn't-
poorly once it hit theaters.
Yes, yes. The process of developing the film aged it poorly.
Jeff Canal, what else have
Anyway.
you been watching?
I watched that new Tom Hanks film Greyhound, which is on Apple TV Plus. This is
I've heard this is a
movie-
good dad movie, and you are a dad, Jeff. You are
I
a
am a dad.
prototypical dad.
What? Okay, explain to me what a good dad movie means to you.
I feel like it's right near a good sit, but it's a good sit for dads. There you go.
What qualifications make it a dad movie?
Good
okay.
enough. Yeah.
It's usually
Let me just throw this out there.
it usually has like it takes place in a war or has like warlike action scenes.
Okay,
It's
check.
usually like
This takes place in World War II.
yeah.
Yes.
So there's usually like a white dude who's the protagonist. So I'm
Yes,
thinking of
this is
movies
the
like
Captain.
I'm thinking of movies like Hacksaw Ridge. I'm thinking of like Triple Frontier, and this movie
About
Greyhound.
white men very good at their jobs.
Yeah,
too,
white men very
typically.
good at their jobs, basically.
Yeah, I mean, this is a movie about a white man who is good at his job. That's for sure.
Is there a family to save?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Oh,
All right. Well,
No
maybe
family
not
to
then.
save.
usually a good hallmark.
Yeah.
That's usually one. I would say though.
I mean, I think you guys are talking about it as a pejorative.
No, not necessarily.
Would you call Crimson Tide a dad movie?
Oh, very much a dad movie.
Yeah.
But that's like the creme de la creme. That's like.
Yeah, well, I think
you
Crimson
know.
Tide is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yes.
I think Greyhound is fucking awesome. And yes, I'm a dad, but it was great, dude. It's like an hour and 20 minutes with no fat on the bone. It is just balls to the wall, nautical engagement. It is just a situation that it is a destroyer that is chaperoning a caravan of ships that have to go through 50 hours of water where they can't have air support. That's the premise. We have maybe 5 minutes of setup, and then we're in it. And that's the entire movie. It's like a scene, like my favorite scenes from Master and Commander or Crimson Tide or The Hunt for Red October, without the rest of the movie. It's just all the insane sea fight part. The what's the word I'm looking for? The not nautical, but the Navy ship battles. That's the entire movie, dude. The script was written by Tom Hanks. I would venture to guess, if you went back and just charted it out, 90% of this movie is absolute gibberish. I went to acting school, and in acting school we had an exercise that we did. One of my movement teachers did this exercise where he said he put people in groups of 2, 3, 4 people, and you had to go off together in your groups and come up with a game that's never been played before. It didn't even have to be a good game, just any game that had rules and that you were trying to win, and that there were ways to win and ways to lose. Then you came back in front of the rest of the class and you played your game without explaining it. So you just tried to win as hard as you could, without explaining what the rules to the game were. And invariably, it was fascinating to watch. 9 times out of 10, you had no idea what anybody was even doing or why. They would be shouting things, nonsense words. They'd be running around from place to place, hopping on chairs, doing stuff. It was completely inscrutable, but riveting. Why? Because the commitment, the passion, the desire, knowing that there are stakes and watching people recognize that there are stakes is engaging, is fascinating. That's this movie. 90% of the dialogue in this movie is bearing 427, flibbledy flop, or whatever you say on a ship. I mean, I'm sure my dad, who was in the Navy, would know some of this stuff, but it is not explained. It is, we're just in it. And it's riveting. It is riveting. Tom Hanks is running back and forth, a thing, pulling up binoculars, trying to spot things. It is a destroyer against a group of German U-boats, submarines, right? It's a destroyer versus a submarine, which I've never seen in a movie before. In World War II, when they didn't have digital anything, it's cranking, it's talking, it's having another crew member basically repeat everything you say to the rest of the, down to the lower decks. It's talking over loudspeakers. It's low tech, but it is fucking awesome, dude. This movie, that is all it is. It's an hour and 20 of just this 50-hour moment where they have to survive. It's awesome. I really liked this movie. Maybe it's because I'm a dad. Maybe I just feel like that's a kind of an unfair pejorative. It's
not a pejorative, Jeff. It's just a descriptor.
I would say it's more like a niche subgenre. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that it's pejorative.
If you guys don't think there's a negative connotation to that, then
no. I call Bosch repeatedly the most dad show ever made. And I recommend it to people who like.
Yeah, Bosch is like one of his favorite shows. So anyway,
it's a thing.
Dad jokes, dad this, dad that.
Oh, I see. It's because of the dad jokes. It's because of the dad.
Well, dad joke. Dad as a modifier is not a positive thing.
Yeah,
and I
like
think
dad bod.
White guy being good at his job is not a positive thing, right? That's what you guys describe.
That's a good thing. We love these movies. What are you talking about? Crimson Tide.
If you're telling me the way we set up this movie was everybody's excited to hear my opinion about it because they're expecting it to be good. I think the way not honest.
The thing about this movie is that it came out of nowhere. It is one of those weird, like, Tom Hanks has another movie and it's gonna be on Apple TV. No, like, very few people have heard of it, but then I started seeing him do press for it, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. It just felt like a really weird one-off thing. Like, there have been other Apple TV Plus movies that nobody has seen or talked about. And it's so weird. So it felt immediately like one of those, but I'm happy to hear it's actually worth watching.
I loved it. I loved it because it doesn't weigh itself down with anything. I mean, there's one scene with Elizabeth Shue at the beginning where it's like, okay, Tom Hanks has someone he cares about, but we're in it for like 2.5 minutes, and then we're on the ship.
Isn't this the beginning of the other boat movie, Captain Phillips?
Captain Phillips. Yeah.
I mean, it's very similar to Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
And I love that movie. I think Captain Phillips is amazing too.
Yes.
But
which, by the way, woman at home that you need to make sure you're okay and survive for is also a hallmark of dad movie. But let me just say, Jeff, I understand why you would take it in a bad way, and it's probably not necessarily a good thing. At best, it's a neutral thing to describe something as a dad movie.
There's no universe in which you saying I heard this is a dad movie would be interpreted by anybody as being like, wow, Dave sounds like he's excited to hear about this movie.
It might be if you are a dad and you like dad movies. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So
you know that being a dad is code for not being cool, right?
I mean,
I know because I am one.
Only if you make it so, Jeff. Like, I feel like I'm wearing it pretty well. I don't know about you, sir.
I am not cool. I will cop to that. I never have been. Never ever in my life have I ever been cool.
Note to self:
become uncool when you're dad. Like, I'm over here singing Sesame Street songs and like doing all the things. But whatever. I think it's also dad movies, and we need to come up with a better descriptor of it. But they're typically like good enough actiony type things where you will enjoy it and you'll also enjoy your time away from your kids. I feel like that's it too. Like it's a vacation from your kids.
I don't need a movie to enjoy that. I just need my kids not to be around.
Exactly.
But yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming. I would say I can understand why you would chafe at the constraints of this being a good dad movie versus just it's a great movie. Period. Right? You don't want to be.
No, I mean,
you don't want this movie
I-
to be
I understand.
defined by the fact that you're a dad and you like this movie. Right?
Well, based on the criteria that you outlined as to what makes a dad movie, this hits all those criteria, right? It's Tom Hanks doing the Tom Hanks thing, right? Being heroic, being this American guy who really has no flaws. You know, he's full of idealism and heart, and you know, feels the pressure but rises to the occasion, right? That's the hallmark of a Tom Hanks movie, to the point where it's almost become a parody of itself. And I think a lot of people even go, "Ugh, Tom Hanks movie where he's playing a real person. Here we go again." But I thought this movie was excellent. And I mean, I can understand the cynicism in going, "Oh, this is a straight to video or whatever, straight to streaming Tom Hanks movie. Maybe won't be so good. It'll be the same kind of thing we've seen him do 1,000 times."
Right.
And maybe that's true. Maybe it is, this is all those other movies. What's the one about landing the plane that was the real guy?
Sully.
Yeah, so
which is
well,
not bad. Not a bad movie.
He's done it all before. But what I liked about this one is putting you inside this experience and not explaining any of it, and just letting you sort of see the mechanics, the mechanisms of how those things worked. Right? It feels crazy. It feels like almost like a play or like a bottle episode of a bigger show, because it's such a pressure cooker. It's such a small confined space, and all these people have to do a certain thing, and it's a very small movie, but also I found it riveting. I really liked it.
Well, Jeff, I'll say you have single-handedly convinced me to watch this movie. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens, I'm going to check out Greyhound.
It's never going to live up to that now.
Yeah,
Now you're going to be like, I need to have kids to enjoy this movie.
I just found this article at theringer.com while we were talking called Introducing the Dad Movie Hall of Fame. And they try to talk about like what is it that makes a dad movie. And the context is Ford v Ferrari is a perfect dad movie. Right?
I hated that movie.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Kevin Clark says Ford v Ferrari has all the elements of a good dad movie. Vaguely aspirational characters who bend the rules, cool cars, a true story, sunglasses, spending some time in Europe but not too much time, and the warped idea that Ford is an underdog despite being one of the largest companies in the world, and that Ferrari, a small company run by one creative genius, is the big bad bully. And then Jason Concepcion,
Underwritten wife, like in a lot of these.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
But,
Jason
okay,
Concepcion
so,
continues.
now tell me-
I think the dad movie is about teaching. Dads love to impart lessons, and they yearn to communicate their values. Unfortunately, dads also hate to talk about their thoughts and feelings. It's just how they were raised. This is the market inefficiency that makes the dad movie necessary. End quote.
That's
Anyway.
brilliant. Actually, that is it right
But
there.
tell me that description of Ford v Ferrari, which is a movie, granted, I did not care for. But tell me that description and how it relates to being a dad movie isn't cynical and negative. It is a teardown of both that movie and Dad.
Jeff, I love that movie, and I think
know
that
you do.
description is perfectly accurate. I think it works completely.
But I'm talking about the tone of that piece, right?
As I
I'm not-
indicated, Jeff, as I indicated, it is at best neutral. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And I
It's
and I
ridiculous
stick
to
and I
suggest it's
stick by it.
neutral.
And I stick by it.
I am not offended. I will tell you, I am not offended. I'm not talking about this because I'm offended.
We've been talking
by-
about this for 15 minutes, but Jeff is not offended by the term.
I'm not offended. I just think that the idea that the only reason I've been arguing so vehemently is that you seem to think that bringing it up in that way is not a pejorative, which is ludicrous.
All right. Well, folks, let's leave it to our listeners, Jeff. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I anticipate many emails.
What do you think the term dad movie represents? Like, what is a good
by
dad
the way,
movie?
Yeah, to what Jeff is saying, I think you could say anything sarcastically and then denote a pejorative of any word, anything. Like it's maybe we used it in that way, but you could really do that for literally any word.
I would
Jeff,
say
so,
think of dad movie as like romantic comedy or rom-com, right? Like,
Right.
yes, some people don't like that entire category of thing, but just because you call something a rom-com does not mean it is bad. It does, however, mean it fits in within certain strictures, you know?
I don't want to keep beating this dead horse.
We should
this
though.
money horse. But if you think that there's the same level of connotation between calling something a rom-com and a dad movie,
I do, 100%.
That they're equally negative or pejorative.
Yes.
I would love our listeners to tell me I'm wrong, because I think that is insane.
Okay. Well, /filmcast@gmail.com is where you got to write in and let us know what makes a good dad movie and whether dad movie is a pejorative or not. When you hear the term dad movie, do you think, yuck, or do you think, oh, that sounds like fun? Which I sometimes have a combination of the two. So /filmcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. But Greyhound is the movie that Jeff's been watching.
Yeah.
Jeff, can we do Dominoes real quick?
No. I just want to talk about something I've been watching with my kids.
Yeah.
Just kidding. See, because I'm a dad. See, that's why.
I get it, Jeff.
We don't have to talk about
Okay,
it. I've been watching YouTube videos of people knocking dominoes over. So now that's a dad movie.
There are a lot of these, not just dominoes, but also like the big setups, like for all the what do you call those things? Like when you knock something over and like a whole chain reaction of things occurs.
Yeah, a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah, I am amazed by some of those, and
Yeah.
one of those also featured into like one of my favorite TV episodes of this year. So that's a fun thing on YouTube. That is total dad material. I love it.
Oh, dude, that could not be more dad material, because it
Yeah.
makes my kids watch. Yeah, we have gone down the rabbit hole of watching these incredible, like, record-breaking dominoes. They're things that, they flick one domino and then, 15 minutes later, it's still going. There's still things falling over. It's insane. I highly recommend people just go down that YouTube rabbit hole, because it's worth it.
Speaking of rabbit holes, you guys know what Twitter account I started following recently?
This is the beginning of every good story, by the way.
There's a Twitter account called Gripping Food with Force. It's just at
What?
it's at Gripping Food. Go to @Gripping Food, and every post is just a photo of someone's hand gripping food with force.
Oh, I don't think I like that. Is it like stuff oozing and squishing out?
Yes, oozing and like
No.
squeezing out and stuff.
I do not want.
Step below food fetish videos. Yeah.
But it's just it's like
that-
pictures. It's not a videos, you know? It's
You
just,
like
whatever,
this, or
whatever.
does it give you the heebie-jeebies? Do you like it or bad?
yeah, I mean I like it in the same way I like horror films. You know? I like how it makes me feel
no.
something.
And
It's like that something is disgust, usually.
discussed. The food cake thing, where all the random foods ended up being cake. I feel like that has been the latest viral phenomenon I've seen, and that is disturbing. That is disturbing as hell.
Yeah. Everything's just cakes now.
Everything's cake, and you never know. Am I a cake? My favorite meme
Cake is a lie.
the scene. Yes, the cake is a lie. But the Terminator 2 scene where Arnold just like rips off his hand to the Dysons and is like, "Look, showing my friends I'm not a cake." Even if they're not asking, and the horrified look of the Dysons, which is like, it's amazing. It's perfect.
My favorite part of that movie, right? That scene, I should say, is they go to visit the Dysons after
Yes.
Linda Hamilton's already shot Dyson in the shoulder.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Hey, your work succeeds. You're actually the bad guy, Miles Dyson." And he's like, "How do we know what you're saying is true?" And then John Connor is like, "Show him." And he takes a knife and he like flips it open, and it's like, "So did you guys work out some code beforehand that you're gonna like cut off your entire arm if you said like show him?" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. How does he know?
did they work that out
do?
in advance? Like, hey, at some point they're gonna need proof. I'm gonna hand you this knife. Cut off your entire arm. This thing that
You
we
do
might need to
5
use later.
seconds to prove somebody that you're a robot from the future. Please.
Yeah. And then what?
Figure it
Then
out.
what? Now you got this arm hanging off.
You got this
Well,
arm
now
hanging
what-
off. It's
now what?
bloody. It's a bloody
Yeah.
thing that's like now you got to deal with this arm by. Well, they dealt with it rather elegantly by putting a glove on it. You know, so
Yeah.
they didn't need to deal with that for the rest of the film. But you could see that causing a lot of problems. You know,
Did he leave? I don't remember. Did he leave the like bloody flesh carcass bit?
I don't think
there?
we
No,
ever
it's
know
just,
what
like,
happens
ripped
to
it
that
open.
flesh carcass.
I think it goes back into the glove.
He just
or
flops
whatever.
it back in
He
place.
flops
and
it
puts a
back in
glove over
place.
it.
Heals. He heals. He sew it up. Come on.
Straight.
You know, something
Mm.
that I've really appreciated about this podcast is that
Yeah.
it has gradually become less of a movie podcast, and it's really more just about documenting our mental and emotional decline during this time.
Well,
right?
we already established we know next to nothing about movies, and I would say 2/3 of us have not even graduated from the YouTube Content Creator Academy. So, what do you expect, Dave?
So let's get to people who've donated to the podcast. People.
For some reason,
The
yes, people are donating
the
money for
perfect
this.
segue. The
Thanks.
perfect segue.
Thanks to Rex Chen, Jorge Albor, Mark Hearn, June Choi, Taylor Weigert, Christopher Calla, and Eric Webster, who writes, "This is my application fee for joining the Jeff Kanata School of Limerick Writing."
Much
Jeff-
more expensive than the YouTube content creator thing.
Yeah, how much is what is 1 year tuition at Jeff Kanata School of Limerick Writing, Jeff?
Oh my gosh. First you have to be selected. You need 3 letters of recommendation that have to be written in the form of a limerick.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an extensive process. And then we can negotiate the fee, right? But the application fee, I appreciate the application fee in advance. It is non-refundable. Even if you're declined. So.
Even if the Jeff Kanata School of Limerick Writing is never formed or built,
Yeah,
I think it's
especially if it's never formed or built.
Then in that case, it is truly non-refundable, right?
Yes,
There's no financial infrastructure with which to refund it. So
that's true. Yes.
okay, Tim from Eugene, Oregon writes, "Hi guys, I'm donating on the condition that Jeff reviews more shows while high. $5 should be enough for at least one edible." He's referring, of
That's
course.
true.
Tim is referring to. I'm sorry. Tim is referring, of course, to our discussion of Floor is Lava last week, which apparently Jeff Kanata consumed while under the influence of drugs. Right?
That's true. That's true. I did have an edible before I had that, and I would say nothing is more a dad movie than something that you you would take drugs to watch while your kids are asleep. That's the definition of a dad
New
movie
dad
for me.
movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a lot of people asking for that. I don't know. I don't know. There seemed to be some confusion that I did the review while under the influence, which is not accurate.
Yeah,
was
not
merely
accurate that
reviewing.
time
I don't
at least.
know.
That time
That
at
stuff
least.
stays in your system, Jeff. I hope you know this.
It's true. It's true. It's true. But I will take it under advisement, and I appreciate the enthusiasm from the audience. Maybe we can all do that. Maybe we should all just do an episode where we all have watched something in a special place.
Yeah, I get too paranoid when I do that. So,
Well, how much better would the review be than the old guard is coming to get you?
if you want to donate to this podcast for some reason, you can go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast. Or go to /film.com, click on the /filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page. Of course, we never want you to donate if it in any way causes you hardship or takes away from money that you donate to other causes. But if you do have some extra cash, feel free to throw it our way. Also, if you want to support this podcast for $0, just go to the Apple Podcast page, take a few seconds to leave a star rating or a podcast review. It really does help. Thanks so much. Let's get to our review of The Old Guard. I think this is going great so far, guys.
This is what the people come for, you know?
Yeah. All right, what's a spoiler in this movie, guys? Any deaths? I would say so and so who ends up turning on the others is a spoiler.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we do not give that away.
Is it in the marketing? Is it that they're immortals? I guess it is.
Yeah.
I think so.
That is the thing. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. That was from the trailer for The Old Guard, new film on Netflix. And I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. A covert team of immortal mercenaries are suddenly exposed and must now fight to keep their identity a secret, just as an unexpected new member is discovered. This movie is directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, and I was really excited to see this movie because it got amazing reviews. Let me do this again, guys. I burped in the middle of that statement. That was from the trailer for The Old Guard, the new movie on Netflix right now. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. A covert team of immortal mercenaries are suddenly exposed and must now fight to keep their identity a secret, just as an unexpected new member is discovered. This movie was directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, and it stars Charlize Theron, Kiki Lane, a bunch of other talented people. It cost around $70 million to make. It was the #1 movie on Netflix the day after it was released. And Devindra Hardawar, curious what you thought of The Old Guard.
Oh yeah, this movie feels like it was made exactly for me. Like it is 100% my jam. I loved everything about it. I tweeted after seeing this movie that it's basically the concept of Wolverine from the X-Men plus a bit of Xena the Warrior Princess in there, which is a show I really loved, and Sense8 from the Wachowskis, which is a fantastic series on Netflix. And it's a whole bunch of those things. Like it's a show. This is a movie about immortal warriors who are just fighting forever, but it also has the great action you'd expect, but it has great characters who are all very distinctive and all have very strong personalities. It really does a great job of selling this concept of them as a fighting unit or as a sort of family. Like it really gets the texture of this world of like, what would it be like to be somebody who's potentially thousands of years old and have seen everybody you've loved die, but also have this whole history and have this small group of friends who, you're just trying to do your bit of good in the world. I loved all this. Netflix has many movies at this point about small groups of people trying to save the world in different ways. And compared to Six Underground, I feel like this is a far better and more successful movie. I dug everything about it. I'm glad this is a success for Gina Prince Bythewood because I've been following her since I saw Beyond the Lights a couple of years ago, which is a fantastic movie. So she is super talented. I love that this is just like a great diverse cast filled with really interesting characters. Like there's so much going on here. At one point in this movie, somebody says like a comment about their partner in the movie. And it's just pure statement of love, which I absolutely adored. This movie has so much heart while kicking so much ass, and I love that about it.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on The Old Guard?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on The Old Guard are best summed up in the form of a limerick. I like movies in this category, but some plots can feel mandatory. So it sure is swell to see this film tell a non-origin story.
Nice.
And I really liked that about it. This is a screenplay by Greg Rucka, comic book writer, based on his comic book, The Old Guard. Very much a superhero movie, very much a comic book movie, but it doesn't follow, I think, a lot of those tropes, a lot of that formula that I know you guys have bristled at a bit with Marvel movies and with superhero movies in general. It feels like a fresh take on that stuff. And I think that's because the structure is more interesting. It doesn't paint by numbers, and yet it does create this wonderful origin story that leaves it open for potential franchise, which I think could be really cool. I agree with pretty much everything that Devindra said. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun and quick and interesting. There's a few things that we can talk about in spoilers that were a little less than great. There's a few moments where I'm like, that just feels a little convenient or kind of dumb, but they're few and far between, and ultimately a very fun movie with really great, clever lore. This is an interesting idea that is super well thought out and super well explored. The ramifications of this are really, I think, interesting and laid out in an interesting way. You've definitely seen all kinds of stories about people that can't die or whatever,
There's a lot of like vampire mythology in here, along with Wolverine and things.
And that stuff has been explored, but I think this really takes a fresh look at it and does it in an interesting way, right? These are people that have one really special thing about them that's super special, but they're not like combined with super strength or the ability to fly or anything else like that. They're not superheroes. They're just you can't kill them.
They still get hurt.
Yes,
but you can't kill them.
Such a cool way in, and also the idea and the exploration of what it's like to have lived a long time. Really, really great. And yes, I agree with you 100%, Devindra. It has heart. It has another layer to it, that it's not just a slick, fun action movie, but it is also a slick, fun action movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I was impressed with it.
One of the first scenes of this movie is just like this core group coming together and chilling out and just seeing each other and giving each other gifts. And it feels like in any other movie, you wouldn't even have time for that like breadth of people reconnecting. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hate to be the odd person out in this case, but I will say that I love the ideas. So sad.
You gotta ruin it, Dave.
You just see him deflate in audio form.
I love the ideas behind the movie. I think that thematically, the movie's racial politics are really interesting. But I think where it falls down is in a lot of the execution. And I can't really talk about it until we get to spoilers. I'll say I thought the action was hit or miss for me. You know, I think that
Charlize is awesome as always.
She's awesome as always, but like the very first action scene, I'm not going to reveal exactly what happens in it, but it feels edited to shreds. You know, like we had just seen Charlize Theron recently in Atomic Blonde, in the action. Is much more male gazy in that movie, but obviously the action feels way more comprehensible to me. Like it's
you can see what's happening.
You can see what's happening. It's wider shots, like uninterrupted takes. It's just like it's so
I feel
much.
Like later on, there's a few action sequences where you really see her do it.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. That is
great.
That is true. But
I feel like. Just to like, since we're talking about action, it is a combination of a bunch of things, because I feel like there's some great choreography, there's some really cool stuff, and then there's some stuff that just feels like kind of half-hearted, like not like it looks cooler than it, or they think it looks cool. I don't think in execution, the moves people are doing actually look that cool. So I wish it was a little more focused in that respect, because I want more of the good action, not the like flowery stuff that they end up doing.
Yeah. And the villain is pretty bad as a villain, and I don't mean like he's evil. I mean he's just he's a cartoon like villain with. He's so evil. You know what I mean? Like it just is.
Dave
started bro as pharmaceutical guy.
His suit jacket has a hood on it.
That part was cool. I was like, I need to get that. You know, I want to style myself after that guy, because can you imagine, guys, an outfit in which you are wearing a suit jacket and a hoodie at the same time?
But you don't have to wear both a suit jacket and a hoodie. That's the problem, is when you want to wear a suit jacket over your hoodie, you have to first put on the hoodie and then put on the suit jacket.
Super inconvenient. Yeah.
If only there were a solution of having the cool hood coming out the back of your suit jacket without the bulky hoodie underneath your suit jacket.
I mean, I'm not convinced that's not what he did, though, Jeff, is put the suit jacket over the hoodie, you know?
No, that is a hood sewn to a suit jacket is what that is.
It is the next evolution of the startup bro form, because the current uniform, one of them is hoodies under suit jackets.
Yes.
So,
no, that's how we know he's a genius.
I mean, it's telling, though, that the thing that we think he contributes most to the depiction of evil is that jacket.
I feel like this movie, like, it had a certain budget, right? And they were able to cast so many great people, like Chiwetel Ejiofor, Charlize, everybody. And then they got to the villain, they're like, well, we can get this guy.
I thought he was great.
No, I thought he was great in doing what they told him to do, which is to say play a very uninteresting character, right?
It's not great.
I think he's, as an actor, I think he's completely up for the challenge of this role, which is not a very good role. Also, what's funny is I watched this movie and I'm like, I have the hankering for another female-led action movie. So I turned Salt on, which is also on Netflix. And Chiwetel Ejiofor is playing basically the same character in that movie.
Listen, he's done this several times. Was it also...
he's trying to track down Salt in that movie, right?
He's trying to track down Salt.
Busy guy.
Serenity, the Firefly movie, he's trying to track down, one of the main characters. Yes. Like, that's his thing. I love it.
He's a tracking guy.
He's a tracking down guy. He's a tracking
I got a track you down character. What actor can I get?
It really kills me we didn't get more of Chiwetel Ejiofor as a goddamn space ninja. That was so good. Oh well.
Shall we get to spoilers for The Old Guard? Sure. Spoilers for The Old Guard starting right now. All right, so let me say right off the bat that in terms of the ideas of this movie, like the thing that resonates most with me, and also my wife watched this movie with me, and she was very taken with it. But this idea that like I think the movie is largely about trauma, right? And how people need to endure it. There's this speech that Charlize Theron's character gives where she says like Kiki Lane's character says something like, what has time taken away from you? And she says, Charlize Theron's character responds, it's not what it's taken away, it's what it leaves behind, right? And the idea that like this movie, I think, is a metaphor for, honestly, the challenges that minorities and people of color need to go through on a daily basis, right? Like the trauma that they need to suffer on a daily basis just to survive. And like that is personified in the fact that they are like these immortal beings that just need to absorb all this shit and keep going. And I think
I'm amazed. I think the most amazing thing, right, is that they do keep going, even though, like, man, every time you try to help humanity, they don't seem very grateful, or it doesn't seem like you're affecting much.
Right. It's
and
lots of relevant, a lot of relevant topical content. And I think it is no accident that the one guy who can't take it anymore is the straight white dude. You know, the one guy who like betrays them all is the straight white dude. I think that's not a mistake in the movie. It's not just coincidence that happened. So I do think like the movie is trying to say a lot about what it is like to not be, in the majority. And I really like that about the movie. Like it's great to have a story like that. My beef with it is only in the execution. There are some parts that are like really, really cheesy. I think the last 5 minutes of this movie is god awful. Like when she's looking at the yarn wall and it's like, oh, like all the people I've impacted over time. It's just like they're making text the sub. It's just like, wow, this is awful.
Dave, we gotta set up a sequel.
Yeah, and then setting
like Netflix doesn't have box office receipts. They don't have anything to go with. They gotta.
I like
really,
how he becomes their oracle. He becomes their.
I didn't mind the part about the post-credit sequence where they find the other woman who was trapped underwater. And by the way, what an amazing go ahead.
One of the most horrifying concepts I've ever
100%
ever encountered.
100%. The idea of not being able to die, basically, right? I think
just drowning over and over every few minutes for hundreds of years. It just entrapped in an iron. Oh, dude, there's nothing that comes close to that. That is, if you just take more than a few seconds to think it through, I can't handle it.
There's a lot of that in vampire fiction, like the Dracula show you love, Jeff. Like that kind of happened, and also Angel, like a lot of different things. But they stay alive, right? They're just very bored underwater. But the idea that you're constantly being revived and dying, and man.
By the way, that woman played by Veronica Go, she was in Last Jedi. She was the woman that detonated the bomber at the beginning of Last Jedi.
She was also Hanoi Hannah in Defy Bloods. Like she's everywhere now. I love her, and she starred in Fury. I love her.
Super talented. So it was great to see her, and it's
Sounds
awesome
like
to see like a multicultural cast in this movie. Devindra, you pointed out there's a scene that we've never seen in a major superhero action movie, which is like a man declaring his love extremely vociferously for another man. I guess like
love throughout eternity.
Yeah,
right?
Throughout
like
eternity.
No
so
poem
cool.
can really match that. And I love the reaction to the security guards. They're just like, shut up, guys. Shut up. Stop kissing.
Those guys that are toxic masculinity, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And that was fascinating. I guess we're a very far cry from the sort of subtle reference to homosexuality in Avengers Endgame, right? This is like really just making everything much more explicit, and so that's all great. So there's many things I really like about this film, and some of the action scenes are pretty good. I love the inside the airplane action scene.
Yes,
that was awesome.
So
like when Kiki Lane and Niall and Andy are fighting for the first time, right? Like that was awesome. I thought it was very well shot, very well performed. But I did find a lot of the action to be pretty underwhelming. I did find it to be like over edited and not super inventive. Although that last action scene when they're in the building did have a couple cool ideas, right?
There was like a cool long take where they like basically trade off victims. Like somebody will punch somebody and like somebody else will shoot them. Like that sort of stuff is good. Then there's stuff where like people are just like twirling their guns around or something, or like do like a little flip flourish that it feels like more show than anything. And I'm somebody who loves John Woo.
Form over function, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I love John Woo flourishes, but maybe not too much, or a little too much here.
The ideas that I liked were, number one, there's a scene where Chiwetel Ejiofor is like, "Oh, I'm not gonna let you go in there by yourself," and then she's like, "No, dude, stay behind. You can die. I can't. Like, stop being a moron." And, and like I was just like, "Oh, this is like a complete reversal of 99% of other action movies, right? Where it's like the woman that needs to stay behind, and it's the guy who gets to be macho and go." And so that was interesting to see. And then the fact that like Charlize Theron among them is the one that is mortal and vulnerable. So they're kind of it's kind of like an escort quest, right? That they need to like.
Right.
They need to like.
I wanted them to lean into that more and just be like, okay, we need to surround her with our immortal bodies and take all the shots that she would have taken.
I was hoping they would do that more, but it didn't really.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's like the ideas are awesome. It's just like the execution is just kind of like I wish it was just a little bit. And of course, right, the biggest thing is and I know you guys.
Just before you get to the biggest thing, I'm hoping that maybe in the sequel, that's like the whole movie is that. It's like she's the leader who is not immortal anymore. And everybody else is. That's a great idea for a sequel. Is she's still a badass. She still has all the knowledge she's gained over those millennia of being alive. She's still their leader, but she's no longer immortal. She's going to age out and die.
She's Wolverine in Old Man Logan mode.
Yes, but with a team of other Wolverines around her. Like, that's awesome. What a cool idea that would be. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like that's what it really comes down to, Dave, like how much you love these concepts. Like, I do agree. I think some of the action is too flowery and not like effective, but then some of it is really cool. And I love the team building. I love the idea that they sort of like dream about each other. Like they have this consciousness
that's
connection,
cool.
which is pure Sense8 stuff. It's great.
Yeah. So couple of the issues I had. But number one is
you said the biggest thing.
Yeah, the biggest thing is basically the premise of this is, hey, and I think all of us, having just played The Last of Us, can identify this. Like, your blood can literally end disease and mortality.
Yeah, right? I was definitely thinking of Last of Us.
And it's like, you might have within you the key to end vast quantities of human suffering, and they're all basically just like, fuck that, And the reason is because the guy who's behind it is cartoonishly evil. Like, imagine if that guy was actually magnanimous and like a nice person, right? Like, then the movie wouldn't work, in my opinion, because
I do feel like they should have explored this a little more too, because they show, these are people who are also persecuted by churches after probably fighting alongside them in the Crusades, I believe, right? So it's there's a lot of like humanity has not helped them, even though they spend their existence fighting for humanity.
Yeah, and there's one line that is a little ambiguous, but he at one point the guy says, I could save all of humanity with your blood or whatever, and he said, I've heard that a million times before.
Yes.
And which you can take as being like, oh, you're just evil and trying to justify your means, or you could take it as like, we've tried this, it doesn't work.
Yeah. The churches have tried it, and now it's like the Church of Science and Technology, and it's the same deal. Yeah.
It sounds like you guys do not agree with the following criticism, which I've heard about this movie and I agree with, okay? Which is that these people do not feel like they are people that have lived for 1,000 years. And they feel, from a personality perspective, they feel like just mercs that happen to be like tougher than usual. They all speak English. They all like they've been through some shit. They've had like some shared experiences. The thing about the baklava, I think, at the beginning was like the closest we get to having a sense that their personalities are of those who have lived for really hundreds of years. I mean,
I would have loved some more of the flashbacks. Like we got bits of that, but
the idea that
but even like here's an example of how that's been done is. In a much different setting, with a much different situation, is What We Do in the Shadows, right? The movie, What We Do in the Shadows. There is like a vampire in that movie that's lived like 800 years, and he basically is nonverbal, right? Like he doesn't speak at all. His head's probably all fucked up, and that's like, okay,
doesn't work if they do that.
But I'm just like, okay, that makes sense to me as a guy who's lived 800 years. Like your mind would be complete mush.
Fiction,
You know,
that fiction of like a vampire where you were also deteriorating. It's like those vampires, they're not technically immortal. They're just aging very, very slowly, right? Whereas this is, you are purely like, you got to accept the
I
premise that
guess.
they're
Although they
selling
also
you.
die randomly when it's
the
convenient
idea
for the
that-
plot.
The idea that in whatever BC, someone that looked like Charlize Theron was walking around is pretty ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? That and it, on its face is pretty insane. But I actually sympathize with that criticism. I do feel like it was a bit like that. But I guess my headcanon was justifying it in the sense that they've
adapted to the times, right? Like,
they have just become, you live long enough that you just sort of fall into whatever, it's not old dog new tricks anymore. It's literally just like, okay, this is the way the world works now.
Now we're all speaking in English now, this is how life is now.
It seems like a weird criticism too. Like, I guess we expect people to retain the stuff that they came with. But yeah, if they're literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of years old, there's adaptation involved. Like that's a whole process too. I wish the movie were longer. I would have liked to explore some of this. I had brought up the HBO show Be Foreigners before, which is a show where European city, but people from the past end up, popping into modern European cities. And like, that is very much that platform where, you literally were just dropped into here and you have all your old customs and your old language and it's hard to fit in. Whereas like, yeah, these folks, they have all the time in the world to learn new cultures and new languages, right?
But I guess, like, wouldn't that shape your worldview? Or, like, instead, they're just all...
I think it does.
Like, okay, I mean, there's a movie that I can't say what it is, but there's a movie we're going to be reviewing in the next couple weeks in which, like, characters are in a very similar situation. And the thing about that movie and other movies is that, like, basically, people who are put in this situation... right, where in an extraordinary situation where you are living forever, people generally deal with that in vastly divergent ways, right? Like,
sure.
You would, and just for some reason, they're all just mercs, basically. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason to think that they would all want to do this thing that they're doing. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. I appreciate you guys' patience listening to my critiques. Go ahead, Jeff.
I mean, I think that, I guess the concept of the movie is they all have done weird things. Like, there's a situation where the two dudes talk about having gone to Malta or wherever it was. You get the sense that they're not just murking all day long every day for hundreds of years.
They do things other than murking all the time.
There's not just murk here, murk there, murk. It's not just a bunch of murking all day.
It's not just murk.
Yeah, there's just it's murk. You know what they say? You know what they say, Dave? All murk and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And so I feel like they have played a little bit, and we just happen to be seeing them when they're murking, and it's.
We basically we didn't see them enough on their off murk time, right? Is really
that's right. Yeah, you can't judge someone by just watching them murk.
You can't judge a murk by its murk. Okay.
Yeah, but
all right.
Honestly, yeah, I mean, she. I think at the beginning it's like, we got to go back and do this. We don't really do this. They've decided that they can nudge the world in small ways, but Charlize's entire position is, I've been doing this for a long time, and the world's actually getting worse.
Yeah,
which is, I think, an interesting position to take. Is that she's like,
she's too old for this shit. She's too old for this shit.
Immortal. It's the cynical immortal who's like, and everything I do for thousands of years has done bupkis. I've been murking so long.
Kiki Lane's character does like bring up like, what if I don't do this? What if I don't, be this? And she tries to get away, and it's like, the convenient reveal where she has to go kill everybody. I feel like this movie tries.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Kiki Lane's role, like Niall being like, "Oh yeah, I'm not gonna go," and I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting that she's turning her back on it." And it's like, nope, she's just forgetting that and just slaughtering all these dudes now.
She gotta help. She gotta help her people at this point. Yeah. But like compared to like The Last of Us 2, which I'm playing right now, which I guess is sort of trying to convey a similar idea of like too much violence bad, except the entire game is violence. Like, to me, I'm not having a good time, and we're gonna probably have a longer conversation about this at some point, but I don't feel like that game is living up to its premise in many ways, where I feel like at least this movie brings up the idea and actually has a character try to go through with it. And yeah, the circumstance that brings them back into this, but I'm hoping to see them living normal lives in the second movie or something like that. And then, the big bad who, the long lost character now out from under the sea will bring them back together for something. So I'm hoping to see different aspects of these characters.
I will tell you guys, it will surprise you not one bit that I knew nothing about this movie when I turned it on. And the opening action sequence kind of blew my mind. I know Dave, you said it was a little underwhelming for you, but I was like, the whole time I was like, they're using swords and guns? And the whole time I was like, honey, does she have a battle axe on her back?
Well, Better has a battle axe, yeah.
You can't see, like, the whole beginning of the movie, they don't show it. They just show this handle, and then, like, she'll go around a corner and you'll kind of see a reflection. I was like, honey, I think that's a battle axe on Charlize's back. It was a cool moment for me because I had no idea why that would be, but it just seemed so rad that
I'm surprised. I thought you would have heard of the comics, Jeff. Like, this seemed like
I have heard of the comics, but I honestly I've never read them and I didn't know what they were about. So yeah, I mean, I knew it was based on a comic. I just had never read this one. So yeah.
So despite my challenges with the end, and when I say the ending, I'm literally talking about that scene where they're in front of the yarn wall.
Yeah.
And
it's bad.
Some of the yarn wall
It's
is
a
pretty
bad
rough
scene.
too. Like if you look
Yarn
closely,
wall.
it's like
It's the It's Always Sunny wall, basically.
yeah, it's always sunny wall. That's right. Yeah, they're yarn walling it, and it's like this, big circle in magic marker Andy question mark. Anyway, some of that was pretty rough, and I thought that whole speech that she
Have you guys ever thought about something long enough that you needed to write your own questions about it on a wall?
Definitely.
You have
Weakness? The whole quiet voice or a quiet place wall. Yeah.
I would be so bummed if, like, I'm making my yarn wall and I'm stepping through the millennia that these characters have been alive, and then I discover something that fits in between these two other points that I already stuck close to each other. I'm like, fuck, I got to reorganize my entire yarn wall now.
Yeah.
Or I guess that's why you get longer strings of yarn, so you can pull just a big long point over here. That's where it gets into. That's where it gets.
Dry erase boards exist. People like use them.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. So anyway, then this whole speech that she gives about, like, you're gonna help us out, and all that stuff was just so rough in my opinion, and setting up for a sequel that we may never see. Who knows? It's very irritating when it sets it up. Okay.
How dare you?
But was a fan of the mid-credit sequence because I spent that entire movie wondering what happened to that woman under the sea.
Oh yeah,
they're not going to drop that.
It's Chekhov's Iron Maiden is what that is. Chekhov's Iron Maiden.
Yeah, and it's just like the image of her screaming down there is horrifying, and you're just like, man,
terrible.
I wonder what's gonna like.
All right.
I thought they were gonna go and try to find her using modern James Cameron-esque sea technology, because like, yes, I understand
if they
in like
if they
300
haven't done
BC you
that-
can't find her, but like maybe now you can with
Right.
James
Yeah,
Cameron
right.
technology.
If they haven't attempted that is just a dereliction of duty, in my opinion. That is, if you're like literally like, we tried hundreds of years ago, and it's like, yeah, but have you seen Titanic?
We have better technology now. Well, Jeff, according to this movie, if they had tried, it would have been a waste of time, right?
Yeah, she was not even there.
She wasn't even there. She got out.
My biggest criticism with this movie is some of the convenient stuff. Like, for example,
hold on, before you get to that, I want to hear it, but I'll just say it reminded me of like the Nick Fury moment in Iron Man. It's like, oh hey, yeah, like there's it's a pretty badass stinger. That's all I'm gonna say. Stingers in general are pretty bad, but like this one was not bad.
Except
Yeah,
now
it
it's
was
like a
cool.
potential villain coming in. Like, she's not going to be happy with these characters, so she's probably pretty mad. Yeah.
I like how this guy has 100 years of purgatory. Can't talk to anybody, and 6 months in, he's already a wreck drunk. It's like, whoa, pace yourself, buddy. Anyway, so my criticisms with the movie are the things that are a little convenient. Like, Chiwetel sets them up at the beginning, and hires his team to. The entire point is to find out if they're immortal. So the team shoots all of them, and then all turn around and start doing something else.
Yeah, they're like, good job,
They
guys,
thought their
nice
job
job,
was done.
great
They
job, well
emptied their
done.
guns. Why would they stick around? Like,
I
To
guess
be fair, Jeff, it's very possible Chiwetel didn't brief them and say like, "Hey, these guys might be immortal. You know, like maybe he was using them as cannon fodder. So I think that
they were definitely cannonball. Like they didn't
I'm
care
just
what
saying,
happened to them.
if one dude doesn't turn around, that's a better. That's just best practices. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
My other criticism, and I understand why movies do this, but it just sticks out to me as a sore thumb. Literally, we have the speech about how some immortals eventually their wounds stop healing.
Yes.
And then the next scene is her wounds stop healing. Like, it's just a little bit. It's just like, oh, okay. She's been alive for thousands of years, but the moment they talk about it is the moment it happens. I don't know.
Yeah. Didn't knock on wood.
Didn't knock on wood. That's true.
I hope we get a sequel to this, by the way, because we learned, what was it, yesterday? Atomic Blonde 2 is in the works at Netflix, and I'm very excited about that.
Maybe it'll even have a plot that's comprehensible this time.
Who cares if it's got good action sequences?
I mean, disagree. One thing I want to mention here, by the way, Extraction, clearly a prequel to the Old Guard. He is an immortal. He is an immortal.
That's why he goes to the bottom of the water and opens his eyes, because he's looking for the chick in the Iron Maiden.
He shows up at the end. Spoilers. But he potentially shows up at the end. He's immortal.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, wouldn't that be rad? It's the Netflix cinematic universe.
Just keep the people from Six Underground away, please. Like, I don't need that.
I think you can probably tell by our conversation that despite all my challenges with it, it's still worth watching, and I believe it is
movie.
It's interesting, and I think it is the first big budget action movie ever directed by a black woman, is my sense, and so it's notable for that reason alone. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
So
there's a lot of crazy milestones we need to hit. Yeah.
Yep. So check it out, and the movie is The Old Guard. It's on Netflix. That is our conversation and review about it. All right, let's wrap it up, gents. You can find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarlock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. Check out his YouTube channel. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week on the podcast. Until then, Jeff Canada, where can I find more of your work on the internet?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Canada, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. I do a video game podcast called DLC, which you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC or wherever you get podcasts. And I do a comedy science show where we talk about science and tell jokes. Well, not jokes, but you'll laugh. I predict you'll laugh. It's called We Have Concerns. You can find it at wehaveconcerns.com. I also do the Dungeon Run, which is my chance to tell big, sprawling fantasy stories. I'm very, very proud of it. Let me just read this little message that was sent to me. I just want to share, folks, what folks are saying about the Dungeon Run. Someone in our Discord wrote, I feel like I need to say this. I've been with this community since episode 16, and I haven't found any other kind of media that has given me this amount of joy and happiness. I'm thankful I discovered this show and to be welcomed in such a wonderful community. Give it a shot. Try the Dungeon Run. You can find it on YouTube by searching for The Dungeon Run. You can find it as an audio podcast by searching for The Dungeon Run. Or you can watch live when we record Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific time at caffeine.tv/The Dungeon Run.
How about you, Devindra?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Devindra, and I write about tech at Engadget.com. Check me out on the Engadget podcast, too. We just restarted that.
All right, so Jeff, since you're reading reviews, let me read this review that I got for one of my other podcasts,
Please.
Culturally Relevant, which was written by a listener named Nam, and he writes in with the subject line, "Help support this overworked man. I am writing a review because David Chen has guilted me into writing this because I consume his content on YouTube, Instagram, /film, and other podcasts for free. And he said the very least I can do is support him. This is the least I can do to support him. I'm here to write about how the Culturally Relevant podcasts have great, thoughtful, well-prepared interviews and monologues from this overworked man who is a husband, corporate minion, and content creator. How does he do it without his body and mind breaking down and alienating his friends? Maybe he hasn't. Maybe he is alienated in his basement with all his DVDs and his hoards. That he hoards, I should say. I would like to know. Be well, David Chen, and bless you. I believe in you, and I'm proud of you and your accomplishments." So, pretty incisive. Pretty incisive review there. It's a little bit less positive than the one you read, Jeff. You know,
A little bit. It does sounded a little bit like your wife wrote that. I just want to point that out.
I don't know about that. Anyway, culturally relevant. Culturally relevant is the name of the podcast. Check it out at culturallyrelevantshow.com. Okay. Next week, we're going to be reviewing Palm Springs, which is available right now on Hulu. Jeff, you have not seen this, right? You have no idea what it's about.
No, I watched it last night.
Oh, you watched it last night? Okay,
but again,
cool.
Hey, public service announcement. I guarantee you that your experience of watching this movie will be better if you don't have any idea what it's about.
Guarantee.
Because
wow.
that's what happened to me, and I'm telling you, I know it's hard now. Everybody's talking about this movie, but if there's any way for you to just watch it without knowing anything about it, oh boy, because about 15 minutes in, you'll be like, what? I think you'll enjoy it.
All right, that's Palm Springs. It's our review for next week. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask. See you later, folks.